Welcome, everyone. Today we're getting into a topic that I think is just so critical for any solo professional out there. It's this paradox, this really painful situation of being constantly, completely busy, but still feeling broke.
It's a huge contradiction, isn't it? And it hits experts who, by all accounts, should be successful. You've left the big firm, you're a skilled consultant, an engineer, maybe a quantity surveyor like we see in some of our source material.
Yeah, and you're working these crazy hours, 50, 60 hours a week.
Huh?
The invoices are going out, your calendar is just packed.
But the profit margin is it's paper thin.
Yeah.
You look at your bank account at the end of the month and wonder where it all went.
And that has to be such an isolating feeling. You're looking at your peers, the ones who are really operating as successful six-figure freelancers, and you know you're working just as hard, maybe harder.
Yeah.
You're delivering this complex, high-stakes work, and yet you're still basically living paycheck to paycheck. So the whole mission for us today is to figure that out. How do you make that shift from the high-activity treadmill to attracting work that actually builds a profitable business?
And we have to start with a diagnosis it's pretty blunt.
Okay.
Activity does not equal income. And volume, all those little jobs, it just doesn't equal stability or profit. This trap is especially tough for really experienced people because they haven't updated their own internal operating system since they went solo.
I want to push back on that a little, though, because when you're coming from the corporate world, activity really did feel like income. Every hour you billed was, real money for the firm.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the core diagnosis? Why does a super skilled person fall into this trap?
The diagnosis is that you are doing way too much low-value work. You're doing it for the wrong clients, and you're doing it at the wrong price. You've basically replaced the optimized strategic system of your old employer with this kind of desperate reactive approach where you're just filling time.
Just saying yes to everything.
Exactly. And until you can admit to yourself that not all work is good work, and frankly, not all clients are worth keeping, that treadmill is just never going to stop.
Okay, let's unpack that because that mindset shift feels like ground zero for this whole problem.
Mm.
Inside a big corporate firm, a major consultancy, every single hour felt productive.
It did.
You're reviewing blueprints, you're calculating costs, you're in client meetings. You knew that effort was turning into revenue. So what was the invisible thing protecting you back then?
That's what we call the corporate safety net illusion. And it is incredibly powerful. When you are an employee, there was this whole machine around you that automatically converted your labor into profitable revenue.
So you, the consultant, you only had to worry about doing the actual work.
Precisely. You were focused on execution.
So break down that machine for us. What were the parts of it that were, shielding the individual consultant from the harsh realities?
Okay, so first, you had sales and business development teams. Their entire job was to go out and secure profitable contracts. So the work that even landed on your desk had already been through a pretty rigorous financial filter.
So it was pre-vetted for profit.
Absolutely. Then, second, you had a pricing strategy team. They made sure your billable rate wasn't just pulled out of thin air. It was optimized for the market, it reflected the project's complexity, and it covered all the corporate overhead, not just your salary.
I see. And then there's all the admin stuff.
Right. Third, you have the finance and admin teams. They handled everything else. The client onboarding, chasing down payments, managing the risk that a client just doesn't pay. All of that was invisible to you.
So when I was putting in my 40, 50 hours a week in that world, my productivity wasn't just my own raw effort. It was my effort plugged into this huge strategic infrastructure that was built for one thing, corporate profitability. I was the engine, but the firm was the whole car, making sure the gas I burned actually moved us forward.
That is the perfect analogy. That infrastructure, it shielded you from the messy parts of the market, especially from, poor client selection. You never had to worry if a client was a disorganized nightmare who would fight you on every invoice.
Because the firm just absorbed that risk.
The firm absorbed it. The work that got to your desk was already pre-approved as being worth it for the firm.
And the contrast when you go solo must be just immediate. It's a shock to the system. You leave that machine behind and suddenly your brilliant technical skill is completely exposed.
It's totally exposed. Exposed to market pricing, to your own, frankly, desperate need for cash flow, and your personal inability to say no to a bad lead.
Because you don't have that filter anymore.
The filter is gone. Your expertise is still there, of course. Your ability to do a detailed cost analysis, for instance, is top-notch. But that's only 1/3 of what you need now.
And the other 2/3?
Strategic sales and rigorous business filtering. That's the part that's new. And if you default to just taking the same kind of work you used to do, but without the firm's pricing power and without their filters, you fall right into that trap, the high activity, low margin treadmill.
Okay, but I have to challenge this from the perspective of someone just starting out. You're maybe 6 months in, cash flow is terrifying.
Yeah.
And that situation isn't any work better than no work. How do you balance that real fear with this idea of being selective?
That is the number one objection we hear. And it really gets to the fear that's driving the whole problem. And look, yes, in the first few weeks, maybe you're in survival mode. You might have to take a smaller job just to get things going.
Right, to keep the lights on.
Of course. But the danger isn't that first small job. The danger is when that survival mindset becomes your permanent business strategy. You start to believe that you must constantly fill your time with low-value filler work just to avoid a cash crunch.
And that's self-defeating.
It's completely self-defeating, because you are using up the very capacity, the time, and the mental energy that the really high-value strategic work demands.
Which brings us to this core idea that anyone who wants to be a successful six-figure freelancer has to internalize. Being fully booked is not the same as building a business. Why is that so hard for people to accept?
I think it's a cultural bias. We're all conditioned to see motion as progress, right?
Right.
Especially in a professional environment, we think effort and, high utilization, those are the same as creating value.
But they're not.
They are not. The hard truth is, being fully booked usually just means you've successfully filled your finite capacity with a bunch of low-margin activity. You've just replaced your old corporate structure with a new, self-imposed, and very inefficient system.
So you're constantly working in the business, just taking whatever comes through the door.
Instead of working on the business to strategically build something that's actually profitable for the long term.
It's a trade-off then. You're trading that immediate but tiny bit of revenue for the chance at a much bigger high-leverage opportunity down the road. You're sacrificing your profit margin just for the feeling of being busy.
That's it, exactly. And this leads to the painful truth that all the truly profitable solo experts get, but the struggling ones just ignore. We have to be really clear about this.
Go on.
Not all work is worth doing. And even more importantly, not all clients are worth keeping. The hidden cost of a bad client is often exponential. It's so much more than the small fee they pay you.
Let's talk about that hidden cost. How can a bad client actually be worse than having no client at all?
They cost you in three critical ways: financially, psychologically, and reputationally.
Okay.
Financially, the bad clients, the ones who argue every line of the invoice, demand endless revisions, pay 60 days late. They require a huge amount of administrative effort, all that chasing, the extra phone calls, the stress. You might bill them for $5,000, but you spend another $2,000 in your own time and overhead just managing them.
And the psychological cost? I feel like that's the one that really sneaks up on you.
It is, because it's the most insidious. That client just drains your mental energy. They introduce chaos into your day. High-value strategic work requires deep, focused thinking.
Which you can't do if you're constantly putting out fires.
You can't. If your mind is always scrambled because you're dealing with some difficult, low-paying client, you lose the bandwidth you need to even spot, let alone attract and execute the really transformative, high-fee projects. You're basically sacrificing your focus at the altar of a tiny bit of revenue.
So understand this distinction, that your capacity is finite and you have to protect it. That's really the first step to becoming one of those truly profitable six-figure freelancers.
It's the leverage point. Because until you start treating your time like a precious, non-renewable asset, you'll just keep filling it with noise. That realization, that shift, it forces you to stop being reactive, just taking work because it's there, and start being strategic.
You start defining what you actually want.
You define the exact profile of the work and the client. That will actually support a high profitability business, because high profitability needs stability, it needs predictability, and it needs margin. And that low margin, high activity work, it offers you none of those things.
All right, let's get granular now. We need to put some names and faces to this low value work so people listening can look at their own calendar and see exactly what's killing their profit.
Yes.
Because to the person doing it, these tasks feel like legitimate work. They feel necessary.
Yeah.
But it's really a vortex that's pulling them away from real profitability.
This is what we call the checklist of profit killers. And I would challenge anyone listening right now to think about how many of these they're saying yes to. Because if you are consistently taking on work from even one of these categories, you are actively burning through the capacity you need for real growth.
Okay, let's start with what seems like the most harmless one, but it's structurally just devastating. Profit killer number one, tiny jobs and one-off documents.
Mm.
So if I'm a QS consultant, this could be, what, a single cost plan for one small part of a project? Or a quick review of a single contract clause. It feels efficient, you knock it out fast. Why is this such a disaster?
Because on the surface it looks good, but it's a total efficiency disaster. They give you minimal revenue, but they demand maximum overhead. Let's just break down the true cost of a so-called tiny job. Let's say you price it at $500 and it takes you 2 hours of your actual expert work to complete.
Okay, so on paper, that's $250 an hour. That sounds pretty good.
It sounds fine, but it's completely deceptive. You have to factor in all the non-billable friction costs that go with it.
Like what?
Well, there's the initial call to qualify them, that's 30 minutes. Then you draft a custom proposal, even a short one, another 30 minutes. Then you have to send the engagement letter, get it signed, set them up in your system, another 30 minutes right there.
And that's before you've even started the actual work.
Exactly. Then you deliver the work, and there's always a call and at least one round of minor revisions. That's another 45 minutes. And then finally, you have to generate the invoice, probably chase the payment, and reconcile it in your accounting. Another 30 minutes.
Wow. You just listed over 2.5 hours of non-billable admin time.
For a task that only billed for 2 hours of your actual high-skill time.
Your effective hourly rate just plummeted. And your mental energy is now fragmented across, 5 or 6 different low-value administrative steps?
That's the point. When you factor in the setup and teardown, tiny jobs are almost always a net loss in terms of your capacity and your momentum. They feel like productive activity, but they actually build instability. They force you right back onto the hamster wheel to go find the next tiny transaction.
Instead of using that time to find one stable recurring client.
A single retainer that could be worth 50 of those tiny jobs. You're
Yeah.
just dedicating all this cognitive energy to these tiny little transactions.
Okay, that makes sense. Profit killer number 2, low-margin tasks and discounted work. This one feels like it often starts from a place of fear, right? You have a slow month, you just want to fill the schedule. So why does giving a discount end up poisoning the well?
It's so destructive because it sets a really poor price anchor in that client's mind. Pricing is, at its core, psychological. When a client manages to get a big discount from an experienced consultant, what happens, maybe subconsciously, is they immediately devalue that consultant's expertise. Their perception of your value is now permanently tied to that low discounted price they managed to get out of you.
And I can see the downstream effect of that. Let's say you do an amazing job on that discounted project. 6 months later, the same client comes back with a much bigger, more complex project. A full-scale review that should be worth $30,000.
And what do?
They immediately point back to the $5,000 discounted job you did as their baseline.
And the whole conversation becomes this agonizing negotiation. You have trapped yourself. You've locked yourself into a low-value mindset with that specific client. And worse, you've signaled to the market, or at least to their network, that your pricing is soft. It's negotiable.
When the truly profitable experts are looking for clients who see a high price as a signal of high competence and low risk.
Exactly. This low-margin work actively undermines that confident positioning. You're basically training your entire client base to look for a bargain instead of looking for a premium solution.
And that brings us to the third one, which feels like the ultimate erosion of boundaries. Profit killer number 3, quick favors. I think this is where so many solo practitioners really struggle because it feels like you're just being helpful. You're trying to maintain relationships.
Quick favors are deadly. They are so deadly because they erode your personal and your professional boundaries at the same time, all under the guise of just being casual and convenient.
It usually comes from someone you know, right?
Always. It's a past client, a referral, a friend in the industry, and they say something like, "Hey, I know you're the expert on contract variations. Can you just take a quick look at this one clause for me? It'll only take you 10 minutes.
And you feel like a jerk saying no. You're worried it's going to damage the relationship or you'll miss out on a future referral from them.
Of course. But that 10 minutes is never 10 minutes, is it?
Never.
It becomes 30 minutes of you actually focusing and reviewing the document. Then another 15 minutes drafting a careful email back with all the right caveats. Then another 15 minutes answering their follow-up questions. It is pure, unpaid, unscheduled scope creep.
And it eats up your most valuable time, your deep focus time.
You're letting other people dictate your schedule. And worst of all, you are giving away your most precious asset, your specialized, hard-won knowledge, for free.
So you spend all this energy delivering expertise that should command a really high fee, And in return, you get $0 and a major mental distraction.
Precise.
So if that's the kind of work we're talking about, let's talk about the clients who are drawn to it, the ones who are actively keeping consultants broke. The sources call them desperate clients who want the world for nothing. What did their behavior actually look like?
This is such a critical distinction. They're really successful six-figure freelancers. They learn to spot these clients from a mile away. They have this predictable pattern of behavior.
Which is?
They prioritize cost above everything else, above quality, above mitigating their risk, and certainly above getting clear, documented outcomes. They are not looking for a strategic partner to help them solve a deep, expensive problem. They are looking for the cheapest possible vendor to just tick a box for them.
And if you're the consultant who's always saying yes to the tiny jobs, the discounts, the favors,
Yeah.
you are basically sending out a giant flare into the market that says, I'm your guy.
You are. It creates this toxic, self-reinforcing feedback loop. When you accept these kinds of engagements, you are signaling to the world that you're willing to compromise on your price, on complexity, on your own boundaries. And so you just attract more and more clients with that exact same profile.
And then you're stuck.
You're stuck spending all your time managing these difficult, penny-pinching clients who, by the way, almost always demand a disproportionate amount of your management effort because they're often disorganized, they're poor communicators, or they're just perpetually looking for a better deal.
Let's use that QS example again.
Mhm.
So a desperate client hires you for a small, fixed-fee contract review.
Okay.
And then for the next 4 weeks, they're emailing you constantly, asking for free advice on other parts of the contract that were totally out of scope. They're arguing with you over a tiny detail on the invoice, and then they're delaying payment for 60 days.
That is the practical day-to-day reality of it. The consultant gets trapped. They're just constantly reacting to the demands of clients who fundamentally do not respect their time or their expertise. And this all comes back to the biggest hidden cost of all,
The opportunity cost.
the opportunity cost. Every single hour you spend managing that low-value engagement is an hour that's taken away from you being able to do genuine, high-value, strategic, advisory level work.
You're so busy digging yourself deeper into this hole that you don't even see the high-value opportunity walking right past you.
That's it. You don't see the big retainer project that requires a clear desk and your full focused attention. High-value work requires that focus capacity. It requires the mental space to think strategically about a client's big picture goals.
And you can't have that space if your brain is scattered.
If your brain is constantly scattered, putting out these little fires for a client who wants the world for $500, you are mentally unavailable to even attract the $50,000 project. You're trading depth for breadth, and the successful, highly profitable six-figure freelancer always, always chooses depth. The high-impact, high-margin, strategic work.
So if the problem is this broken model of trading time for money, then the solution has to be a pretty foundational mindset shift, right? A global redefinition of what you're actually selling.
Exactly.
We have to move from the time equation to the value equation. The value of a great consultant is not measured in how many hours they work.
This is the turning point. This is what unlocks high profitability. The struggling consultant is obsessed with inputs, how many hours they worked, how many documents they produced, how many meetings they went to.
Okay.
The profitable six-figure freelancer focuses exclusively on outcomes, on results, on protection, on strategic certainty. For them, time is just a variable in how they deliver the service. It is not the unit of exchange.
I need you to elaborate on that because value can feel like a really abstract concept. How is that true value actually measured? What are the components?
It's measured in quantifiable benefits to the client. We can break it down into 3 core components that high-value clients are not just willing, but are eager to pay a premium for.
Okay, what's component number 1?
Component number 1 is clarity.
Clarity.
Clarity is essentially navigational guidance. High-value clients, especially on these huge, complex projects, think commercial construction, major IT overhauls, they are drowning in risk and unknowns. They're often just paralyzed by the complexity of it all.
So they need a map.
They need a map. They need to know the most direct, the most secure path from where they are today to a successful completion.
So the consultant's real value isn't producing the 50-page report. It's the 2 pages in that report that provide a confident, clear, strategic recommendation that breaks the client's paralysis.
Absolutely. The client is paying for the certainty of the direction. They're paying you to simplify the complexity, to eliminate the ambiguity. They are not paying for the hours you spent gathering all the data. You are selling the answer.
I see. Okay, component number 2, which feels really relevant for fields like quantity surveying or IT security, is risk removal.
Risk removal is probably the single biggest driver of high fees. A high-value engagement is, at its heart, an insurance policy against a catastrophic loss.
Give me an example.
Think about that QS consultant reviewing construction contracts. A single overlooked clause, one miscalculated cost fluctuation, a poorly structured bid. Any of those things could lead to a $500,000 cost overrun or a completely crushing legal battle.
So the client isn't paying the consultant $30,000 for that review because it takes 10 hours.
Oh,
They're paying because that review prevents a $500,000 disaster.
precisely. The consultant's knowledge is actively reducing the chance of financial or operational disaster. And this is where that whole time equation just completely falls apart. The fact that you spent 10 hours on it is irrelevant. The fact that you saved the client $500,000 is everything.
So your value is calculated based on the size of the disaster you help them avoid.
That's the formula. If you, the consultant, save them $100,000 in potential losses, then charging them $20,000 for that service is an incredible return on investment for the client. They're happy to pay it.
And the third component, which seems to bind the first two together, is this ultimate emotional currency, confidence.
Confidence is priceless. It truly is. When the consultant provides that clarity and removes the risk, the client gains this immense assurance in their own project and their own decisions. They can sleep at night, they can go to their board or their investors and confidently present the strategy and the numbers without that fear of being blindsided by some variable they didn't see coming. They are literally buying peace of mind.
So the consultant has to stop asking themselves, how many hours did this take me?
And they need to start asking, how much certainty and how much protection did I deliver to my client?
So if this low-value vortex is sucking up all the time of the struggling consultant, who's actually getting the good stuff? Who's getting the strategic, ongoing, high-value projects? Because they're out there. That's what defines a stable, profitable, six-figure freelancer.
They are definitely out there. And they go exclusively to the solo experts who have successfully signaled to the market that they operate on the value equation. Those deep, long-term retainers where you really become a trusted advisor, they go to people who embody 3 very specific characteristics. And these are not soft skills, these are financial filters.
Okay, let's hear them. Characteristic number 1.
They position themselves clearly, meaning they are ruthless about defining their niche, they are razor sharp, they completely reject the idea of being a generalist who can solve any problem for anybody.
So they're not just a QS consultant for construction projects.
No. They are the expert in optimizing structural cost efficiencies for mid-size healthcare facility developers in the Pacific Northwest. That level of specificity is a magnet. It attracts the clients who know exactly what their expensive problem is and are willing to pay a massive premium for that specialized certainty.
So they stop saying, oh yeah, I can do that, and they start saying, I specialize in this one. Very expensive problem.
That's it. Generalists are forced to compete on price. Specialists get to compete on results and on confidence. And that clarity, that positioning, it's the very first filter that repels the desperate clients and attracts the high-fee ones.
Okay, that makes sense. Characteristic number 2.
They price confidently.
This one sounds non-negotiable.
It is. Their pricing has to reflect those value metrics we just talked about. Clarity, risk removal, confidence. It cannot be based on their input hours. They use value-based pricing or fixed-fee offers or retainer models that completely decouple their income from the hours they work.
And the price itself acts as a filter.
It's its own filter. It immediately repels the desperate clients who are only looking for a discount. It saves the consultant the time and energy of even having to talk to them. Confident pricing is basically a declaration of your strategic worth.
And characteristic number 3.
They say no to noise.
This connects all the way back to protecting your capacity.
All the way back. They actively filter out that whole low-value vortex we talked about. They understand, as a fundamental law of their business, that every time they say yes to a tiny discounted job, they are saying a binding no to a potential strategic opportunity that needs their full attention.
They treat their time as their most valuable asset.
Their most precious, non-renewable resource, they protect it fiercely so that when that really high-value opportunity does appear, they actually have the time, the energy, and the mental clarity to grab it with both hands and execute it flawlessly.
So we've covered the mindset shift. We've identified the profile of the profitable expert. Now we need the tools. We need the how. The source material lays out 3 specific pillars: Structural changes that consultants have to build to get off that busy but broke plateau and reach that six-figure freelancer status.
These are the tangible changes. This is how you stop the transactional treadmill and start building a real, sustainable business structure. It's what moves you from being a reactive vendor to being a proactive advisor.
Okay, let's start with what feels like the most central transformation.
Yeah.
You have to move from selling time to selling package solutions. Why are well-defined offers the key to breaking through the ceiling of hourly billing?
Because offers are what standardize your high-value deliverables. They make your expertise repeatable and, most importantly, scalable. When you sell by the hour, the client just sees a ticking clock and a variable cost. Their incentive is to use as little of your time as possible.
But when you sell a package,
When you sell a packaged offer, let's call it a critical path risk mitigation audit, for $15,000, you're selling a guaranteed outcome. You are selling a known solution to a very specific, very painful, and very expensive problem.
so how does a consultant start doing that? How do you take these complex things you do and turn them into a neat package?
You start by looking for patterns in your work, and you align those patterns with those three value metrics: clarity, risk removal, and confidence. So, for example, a consultant might realize that 80% of their new clients all have the exact same pain point: a total lack of cost control in the pre-construction phase.
Okay.
So instead of quoting them for 40 hours of work, they create an offer called the Initial Cost Certainty Blueprint. This package guarantees the client gets clarity and risk removal, and it's priced at a fixed fee that reflects the outcome, saving them from future delays and cost overruns, not the hours it takes to produce it.
And this is where you can really leverage your own expertise. Because if I'm an expert, I might have a proprietary system or a checklist that lets me deliver that cost certainty blueprint in just 15 hours, when it would take a generalist 40 hours to do the same thing.
Precisely. You are leveraging your experience and your efficiency. You charge for the result, not for the duration. This is the only way you can scale your income exponentially beyond the hard ceiling of an hourly rate.
Right.
If that blueprint is priced at $15,000 and you can deliver it in 15 hours, your effective hourly rate is now $1,000 an hour. That is how the most profitable six-figure freelancers generate serious income and create sustainable margins for themselves.
So besides fixed fee packages, what other kinds of offers help people break free?
Retainers are the key to moving into that true advisory role. Instead of selling a single task, a retainer sells ongoing peace of mind. It sells that confidence metric.
I see.
So a monthly risk advisory retainer, for example, ensures that you are available for strategic guidance, for quick reviews. The client is essentially buying priority access to your capacity. They pay a high recurring fee, not for your immediate labor, but for that access, for speed, and for continuous risk monitoring.
And that gives the consultant predictable income.
Predictable, high-margin, monthly income. It stabilizes the entire business in a way that chasing a dozen tiny jobs never, ever could.
Okay, pillar 2. We often talk about boundaries in terms of avoiding burnout, which is obviously important. But here you're saying we need to treat boundaries as a strategic business tool, a financial instrument even.
Absolutely. Boundaries are the protective wall you build around your capacity. They ensure that all that available space isn't just flooded with low-margin requests. If you don't actively create that space by setting firm, clear boundaries, the market, and specifically those low-value clients, will just rush in to fill it with tiny jobs, quick favors, and unscheduled phone calls.
Can you give me a tactical example of a boundary that acts as a financial filter?
Communication protocols are a huge one. A highly profitable consultant does not answer client emails at 11 p.m. on a Saturday.
Right.
By setting a simple boundary like, my standard response time is within 24 hours during normal business hours, Monday to Friday, you're doing a few things. First, you're protecting your own deep focus time. Second, you are educating your client on what professional, high-value service looks like. You're differentiating yourself from the desperate vendor who's available 24/7.
So your non-availability actually becomes a subtle signal of your high value.
It is. Your strategic no to a small, immediate request is actually a powerful guess to your most profitable future work. It is the ultimate prioritization tool.
Like training your clients.
You're training them to respect your time and to only come to you with issues that are genuinely important and strategic. If you answer the phone every single time it rings, the client learns that your time is cheap and interruptible. But if you make them schedule a call, think through their question, and respect your process, they start to treat your input as something truly valuable. Boundaries are an active defense mechanism against market chaos.
Okay, so we've identified the desperate client problem, The final pillar has to be the formal way you avoid them. Professional client selection criteria. This can't just be a gut feeling, can it? It has to be an objective process. What does that look like?
It looks like a conscious, rigorous filtering process that you do before you ever invest time in a detailed scope or proposal. The criteria have to ensure that you only dedicate your finite capacity to clients who are ready and willing to pay for clarity, risk removal, and confidence. Our three core value metrics. You're screening for alignment, for project complexity, and for budget readiness.
So what are the kinds of questions a consultant should be asking on that first discovery call to filter a prospect effectively?
The questions have to be designed to test their commitment to value over cost. So, for instance, you can use the cost of inaction test.
What's that?
You ask them, if we don't solve this specific problem for you, what is the measurable financial or operational consequence 6 months from now? What is the maximum risk exposure we are trying to prevent here? If the client can't articulate a big, expensive problem, they're probably just looking for cheap labor, not a high-value solution.
That's a great filter. What's another one?
The fee structure test. You say something like, our process for this is delivered via a fixed fee package that guarantees outcome X. Are you prepared to pay a fixed fee for that outcome because you value the result more than the input hours? If they immediately pivot and ask you for your hourly rate, they are self-selecting out of your high-value category.
And a third one.
The relationship test. You ask, do you have established internal processes and decision makers in place? And are you committed to respecting the communication and payment boundaries that will be in our agreement? High-value clients respect structure. Low-value clients demand chaos and flexibility on their terms.
This whole process ensures you're only spending your time on clients who will actually accelerate your journey to becoming a profitable six-figure freelancer instead of slowing you down with all that friction.
It's strategic filtering right at the front gate. By establishing and actually sticking to these non-negotiable criteria, you proactively attract the right kind of work. If a potential client balks at your criteria or demands a discount on your fixed fee offer or can't tell you what their problem is costing them, they are effectively disqualifying themselves.
And that saves you months of headaches.
It saves you time, headaches, and the energy you would have wasted on low-margin labor. And that is the difference. It's the difference between just working hard and strategically defining your true worth in the market.
This has been, I think, a really necessary and structurally clear look at a painful truth for so many people. The shift you need to make to join the ranks of the truly profitable six-figure freelancers. It's not about working more hours.
Not at all.
It's paved with deliberate strategic no's. It's about careful selection of both the work you do and the clients you do it for. You have to stop being a reactive vendor and start being a proactive, indispensable advisor.
That's the bottom line. The path to real stability is that direct shift. From trading your time for tiny fees, which just keeps you on that high-activity, low-margin treadmill, to attracting superior clients by using solid, outcome-based offers, firm boundaries, and rigorous client selection.
So if you're out there listening and you feel like you're drowning in tiny jobs, quick favors, and discounted work, you don't just have a time management problem. You have a structural problem in your business model. You're confusing activity with real success.
And with that, here is a final provocative thought for you to consider this week. It's really designed to help you restructure your focus. If you want to achieve the success of the most financially stable and profitable solo experts, you have to ask yourself this question. What low-value task or what low-value client are you saying yes to right now that is actively blocking the strategic, high-value work, the work you actually deserve, from ever finding you?
Take a minute and reflect on your own ratio. Look at your calendar from the last 2 weeks. How much of your time did you spend on low-margin filler work versus high-impact strategic advisory work? That ratio right there holds the key to restructuring your business for genuine six-figure profitability.